Welcome to the Fashion Algorithm. We're diving deep into the global fashion industry today with insights from McKinsey & Company. And a big thanks to our sponsor, Cloutfit.ai. That's Cloutfit.ai.
I've heard of them.
They connect those influencer outfits you see online, directly to a brand's product inventory, making it all instantly shoppable.
Oh, that's smart.
It really is. Definitely check them out if you're a brand looking to boost sales and order value. But okay, so back to McKinsey. Their research uncovered something pretty interesting.
Like what?
This unexpected resilience in the fashion industry. You'd think with all the economic uncertainty and, global instability, fashion would be, well, struggling.
Yeah, you'd think so. I mean, people are worried about spending, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But McKinsey's data shows this, pent-up demand for fashion. It's like this tug of war between our anxieties and this need to, express ourselves through clothes.
That's a good way to put it.
But before we get too deep into consumer trends, let's talk about 2022. McKinsey highlighted some major unforeseen events. What were some of the big ones that impacted the industry?
Oh, 2022 was a wild ride. Well, the war in Ukraine, for one, that really messed with global supply chains, and fashion really relies on those.
It really does.
And just when things seemed to be calming down, Omicron surged.
Right. And don't forget about the persistent inflation. It really put a strain on businesses and, consumers' wallets.
For sure. I can't imagine trying to plan or forecast demand with so much uncertainty.
It must have been incredibly difficult.
McKinsey really emphasized how all this volatility impacted both brands and suppliers.
So let's talk about the suppliers. What specific challenges were they facing?
Well, demand from brands was constantly changing. Consumption patterns, too. They were basically playing catch-up all the time.
Trying to adjust production but not really knowing what the demand would be in a few months?
Exactly. And forecasting, forget about it. Impossible. Ordering raw materials, scheduling factory time, a total nightmare.
Sounds like it. So what were suppliers doing to, adapt to this chaos? Did McKinsey offer any solutions?
They did. They suggested closer partnerships between brands and suppliers.
So more communication, sharing data,
Yeah. If both sides are more transparent, they can make better decisions together.
working as a team.
Exactly. But it's not just about communication. Investing in more flexible systems is important too, systems that can, adapt to changing demands.
So being able to ramp up or down production quickly without a ton of costs or delays.
Exactly. Think of it like, I don't know, a wardrobe that you can change for different seasons or occasions. And McKinsey also talked about cost management with, rising prices and tighter margins. That became really important for suppliers.
I bet. Staying agile while keeping an eye on the bottom line. That must be tough.
It is. But there was some positive news too. You mentioned earlier the surprising global fashion recovery.
Yeah, that caught my eye. After all the doom and gloom, I'm ready for some good news.
Well, despite everything, the global fashion industry recovered faster than expected. By the end of 2021, it had reached 2019 levels.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Shows how resilient the industry is.
It does, but it's important to note that the recovery wasn't the same everywhere. Asia, especially China, bounced back really quickly.
So some parts of the world were still struggling, but Asia was back on track.
Pretty much. Europe had a slower recovery, mainly because of travel restrictions. Those really hit fashion hubs like Paris and Milan.
Yeah, tourism is so important for those cities.
Huge. And North America. Well, they had this, what they call a V-shaped recovery, a sharp decline followed by a rapid rebound.
Like a roller coaster, but with a positive ending.
Exactly.
It's fascinating to see how different regions were affected.
hmm
So what's the current outlook for these regions?
Well, for China, it's a bit uncertain right now, mainly because of their zero COVID policy.
Yeah, those lockdowns are still causing disruptions.
They are, but Europe is doing better. Travel is picking up again, so that's good news for European brands.
People are ready to travel and shop again.
They are, and North America still going strong, still a key driver of growth in the global fashion industry.
That's great to hear. But I'm also curious about the role of technology in all of this. The pandemic forced many businesses to go digital, right?
Yeah, it really accelerated things.
So how has that impacted the fashion industry?
Well, McKinsey talked about how the focus is shifting from, front-end technology like e-commerce to digitizing the entire supply chain.
So not just reaching customers online, but streamlining everything behind the scenes.
Exactly. There are several reasons for this shift. Better planning and forecasting, for one.
Having access to real-time data.
Yeah, inventory levels, production capacity, demand signals. It helps brands make better decisions and react faster to market changes.
Especially in a volatile environment like the one we've been talking about.
Right. Another reason is traceability and sustainability. Consumers are demanding more transparency, wanting to know where their clothes come from and how they're made.
They want to know it's ethical and sustainable.
Exactly. And digital tools can track materials, production processes, provide that transparency.
Makes sense. So it's good for brands and consumers.
It is. And McKinsey also pointed out that digitizing the supply chain is essential for meeting the demand for personalized and on-demand fashion.
Oh, yeah. We all want what we want when we want it.
Right. So technology is helping brands become more responsive to those demands.
Interesting. We've talked about the external factors, but what about the consumers themselves?
Oh, that's key.
How are their behaviors shaping the industry?
Well, McKinsey emphasized that understanding consumer demand is crucial.
Of course. The customer is always right, as they say.
They are, and McKinsey found that despite recessions and inflation, consumers have this pent-up desire to spend on fashion.
Really?
That's interesting.
Especially in categories that were hit hard during the pandemic. Things people didn't buy much when they were stuck at home.
So what kinds of things are people buying now that they're going out again?
Think dresses, high heels, suits, things you don't really need for, working from home or Zoom meetings.
So a fashion comeback.
You could say that. It's driven by a few things. This desire for celebration, going back to normal after, all the restrictions.
People are ready to have fun with fashion again.
They are. Travel is also a factor. People need new outfits for their trips.
And I bet the strong North American economy is helping too.
Definitely. The U.S. has been a major force in the global fashion recovery.
That's good news. But didn't McKinsey also mention some concerns?
They did, like the rising energy costs, for example.
And how that might affect spending.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
And also what happens when people come back from vacation and, face those bills.
So lots of optimism, but some potential challenges ahead. What advice did McKinsey have for brands trying to navigate this?
Well, first, be prepared for a potential recession. Have solid plans for fluctuating demand.
So be ready to adapt quickly.
Exactly. They also talked about this growing polarization in the industry.
What do you mean?
There are these, super winners who are doing really well, but many other brands are struggling.
So it's a tough environment for some.
It is. McKinsey stressed the need for transformation, moving towards digital business models.
Basically, embracing technology.
That's essential now.
It all seems connected. What about sustainability? Has that been pushed aside with all these other challenges?
Not at all. McKinsey made it clear that sustainability is still a top priority.
That's good to hear.
But it's not just about talking about it anymore. It's about taking action, showing real progress.
Walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And technology can help. Things like digital product passports and traceability tools.
To provide that transparency consumers want.
Right, so they can see where their clothes come from and how they're made.
So these technologies are empowering brands to be more sustainable.
That's the idea.
Fascinating. You mentioned these super winners earlier. What sets them apart? What are they doing differently?
McKinsey found a few things. They tend to have strong brands, a global presence, and offer a diverse range of products.
So that they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly. They've also embraced digital business models. They get a lot of their revenue online.
And they use data to understand their customers?
Yes. They're very data-driven, and they're good at spotting trends and adapting quickly.
So they're staying ahead of the curve.
Oh.
This has been an amazing deep dive. I feel like I have a much better grasp of the fashion industry now. But before we move on, what does all this mean for the average fashion consumer?
That's a good question. How will these global trends impact our personal style choices, our shopping habits? It's something to think about. It really is something to think about. On one hand, we have these big global forces shaping the industry, but on the other hand, fashion is so personal.
It is. It's how we express ourselves. So how do those two things, work together? How do global trends influence what we choose to wear?
It's like a dance between the big picture stuff and our own individual style.
I like that.
We're all influenced by, the economy, social trends, even technology. But we filter all of that through our own personal lens, our style, values, budget, all of that.
It's not just about following every trend. It's about finding inspiration, seeing what works for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes fashion so interesting. It's where global trends and personal style meet.
I agree. But let's talk about something more practical. Remember McKinsey's advice for brands navigating this uncertain future?
Oh, right. Being prepared for a potential recession.
Right. What does that actually look like for fashion brands? How do they get recession ready?
Well, McKinsey said having a plan for dealing with changing demand is crucial.
Yeah.
Being able to adjust production so you don't have too much or too little inventory.
So being flexible, being able to adapt quickly.
Exactly. And that takes a good understanding of your supply chain and strong relationships with your suppliers. You need to be able to communicate well and work together when things change.
So collaboration is key.
Very key. McKinsey also talked about managing costs, which, is always important, but especially during a recession.
When every dollar counts.
Right. So that might mean streamlining operations, maybe negotiating better prices with suppliers, or even changing your pricing strategy.
Making tough choices.
Sometimes, yeah. And the last thing they emphasized was staying close to your customers, understanding their needs, their concerns, and how they're spending money.
So really understanding the consumer landscape.
Yes. And being empathetic, recognizing that, everyone's feeling the pressure.
It's about remembering that fashion is about people.
It is connecting with each other, expressing ourselves, finding a bit of joy even when things are tough.
Well said. Speaking of connecting, McKinsey also talked about that polarization in the industry with those super winners pulling ahead.
Right.
What does that mean for everyone else? Is there still space for smaller brands to do well?
That's a good question. It's complicated.
But what do you think?
Well, the rise of those super winners does suggest the industry is becoming more concentrated, with a few big brands controlling more of the market.
Like survival of the fittest.
Kind of. But fashion is also so dynamic, new trends pop up all the time. Tastes are always changing.
So there's always room for new ideas, new brands.
Absolutely. And that's where smaller brands can still find success. By focusing on specific markets, maybe offering unique products, and building those strong customer relationships.
So finding their niche.
Exactly. And using technology to their advantage. They might not be able to compete on a global scale, but
Yeah.
they can still use digital tools to reach new customers, personalize things, make the shopping experience more engaging, like we were talking about with Clofit.ai earlier.
Right. Technology can help even the playing field.
It can. It's a really interesting time to be in fashion with all these changes happening.
It is. But let's bring it back to our listeners. How do you think these global trends are affecting their everyday style choices and shopping habits?
That's a great point. It's one thing to talk about trends in general, but how are they actually showing up in our lives?
Exactly.
Mm.
Have you noticed any changes in your own shopping habits or style lately?
I have. I'm definitely more mindful now about what I buy, both in terms of sustainability and, how much things cost. I think more about how long something will last, what it's made of, the environmental impact.
Same here. I'm trying to avoid impulse purchases and really invest in pieces I'll love for a long time.
Quality over quantity.
Exactly. And I'm definitely more aware of where my clothes come from and how they were made. I want to support brands that are doing things ethically.
That's so important. Transparency and ethical production are becoming more and more important for a lot of people. And I think the pandemic really sped that up.
I think so too. Having that time at home, it made a lot of us think about our values. And that's showing up in how we shop now.
It's like we're looking for more meaning in our clothes and our style.
It's about aligning our style with our values.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just about individual choices. There's also this growing awareness of the impact the fashion industry has as a whole.
Right. People are learning more about the environmental and social costs of fast fashion. They want brands to do better.
It's like our individual choices are adding up to a bigger push for change.
A ripple effect.
Yes. And those super winners, they're showing that it's possible to be both successful and responsible, to make beautiful clothes while also respecting people and the planet.
That's encouraging. It gives me hope for the future of fashion.
Me too. It shows that even with all the challenges, things are moving in a more sustainable and ethical direction.
And that's something we can all be a part of.
Definitely. Every purchase we make matters.
So let's make choices that support the kind of fashion industry we want to see.
I love that.
Because ultimately, the future of fashion is up to all of us.
It really is. And I think it's important to keep having these conversations, to learn about the issues, and to make informed choices.
Knowledge is power, right? The more we understand about fashion, the better choices we can make.
Exactly. And that's what the fashion algorithm is all about. Helping our listeners navigate this world and make choices that feel good and are good.
It's a journey we're all on together. So let's keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing for a better fashion future.
I'm all in.
Great. Before we wrap up this episode, let's give a shout out to our sponsor, Cloutfit.ai.
Oh, yeah. They're the ones connecting those influencer outfits directly to product inventory, making everything instantly shoppable.
Such a smart idea.
It is. It makes things so much easier for consumers. They see something they like on their favorite influencer and can buy it right away.
It's a win-win. If you're interested in learning more about Cloutfit.ai, head to their website, Cloutfit.ai. That's CLOUTFIT.ai.
And if you enjoyed this episode, tell a friend, especially if they love fashion and tech.
And be sure to subscribe to the Fashion Algorithm for more discussions about the future of fashion.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, stay stylish and stay informed. It really is amazing how it all connects. Global trends, individual choices, it all ties together. It shows how powerful fashion can be, reflecting society and driving change at the same time.
Absolutely. Fashion really captures the mood of the moment. It reflects what we're hoping for, what we're worried about, everything.
It does. It's like a snapshot of where we are as a society. But before we wrap up, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier, that idea of fashion as a force for good.
Right. Using our style to make a positive impact. I think that's so important.
Me too. We've talked about all the challenges, the need for sustainability, ethical production, all of that. But what does it mean for us as individuals? How can we use fashion to make a difference?
That's the big question, isn't it? I don't think there's just one answer. It's about finding what matters to you and making choices that reflect your values.
So being more intentional about what we buy.
Exactly. Thinking about more than just trends and how things look. Thinking about the impact of our choices. Supporting brands that are doing things the right way. Investing in quality pieces that will last longer. Being more mindful about how much we buy.
Shifting from more is more to, less but better.
Yes. It's about having a wardrobe that you love and that reflects who you are, not just a bunch of random clothes. And realizing that every time we buy something, we're supporting a certain kind of fashion industry.
We're voting with our wallets.
We are. And that's pretty powerful. We have the power to change things, to demand transparency, to choose sustainable options.
To use our voices and our money to create a better fashion industry.
Exactly. And that's really encouraging. It means that even though there are challenges, we can make a difference.
I love that. So to everyone listening, embrace your personal style, but be conscious of your choices too.
Let's use fashion to make a positive impact, one outfit at a time.
Well said. On that note, I think it's time to wrap up this episode of the Fashion Algorithm. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the global fashion industry.
It was my pleasure.
And a big thank you to our sponsor, Cloutfit.ai. You can find them at CLOUTFIT.ai. They're revolutionizing shoppable content, so if you're a brand looking to up your influencer marketing game, definitely check them out.
They're doing great things.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, especially if they love fashion and tech. And don't forget to subscribe to the Fashion Algorithm for more insights into the future of fashion.
Thanks for listening.
Until next time, stay stylish and stay informed.